Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Virtua Vibes. Pierre and me with a special guest today. Pierre, any guesses? Who? White hands, red face.
I'm not getting into that territory.
Flipping finger.
Some sort of pensioner, I think, is who we've got today. But dragged out the old people's home.
Gary B, the most famous Gary B after Gary Barlow, Gary Busey, Gary Booker, Gary Bracey. Top 5, baby. Top five.
Who's Gary Booker?
I don't know. He's a singer. I wanted to find out Gary B's.
Okay.
No, did you hear that Coolio died?
Yep.
Yeah, I heard that. He's gone to the gangster's paradise in the sky.
That's right.
Actually, very sad. He's quite young.
59.
Yeah. No age. Well, I'm delighted to be on the alliteration show, as I call it, Pierre and Parves on Virtua Vibes. The alliteration show. Jeez.
Gary, I know you've done a lot. You've done a lot of talks, a lot of podcasts, a lot of YouTube stuff over the years. But when you come on Vibes, baby, you know you've made it.
Yeah, and it's the first one. This will be the first one where I've been asked to take my top off, which I'm looking forward to.
I think maybe something got lost in translation there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You know, it's probably my Indian accent. It isn't my first language. You know what I mean, right? So.
No, we can tell. In fact, it's not your second or third either. I need subtitles when you speak, Parves. I'm sorry.
Pierre, please make note of that, right? Have it, please, for him. Where do we begin with you, Gary? How do we, the main aim for this conversation, right, what we do in Virtual Vibes is to actually talk about stuff different from what you've done in other podcasts. We want to know more about you, where you come from. One of the challenges, and we've done for all the other people like Ash and Doug, is tell us something that no one knows, that you've never told anyone else, right? So that we'll come to that as well. And Ash and Doug, they've always told, ask Gary. He knows a lot of stuff. Ask him for the stories. So you got to tell us the stories, baby.
Okay, at the risk of being arrested.
The good stories, the clean stories.
Oh, okay. Oh, there aren't many of them.
Nothing.
So why don't we start with your foray into Virtua, previously Terra Virtua. How did this all begin? And I know this is a story that a lot of people might have heard, but give us the version.
The version, or the version. Okay, very, very briefly, because I have spoken about this extensively, as has Jawad. I've been in video games for a long, long time. Jawad had a company, a studio, a VR game studio called Big Immersive. He was looking to create some VR games and was to publish them in the West. So he was looking for someone who could help set up that publishing operation. I was doing a lot in China as well at the time. So he was looking for someone who could potentially help him publish globally. So a mutual friend introduced us. We got together in a disgusting place in the UK called Staines, which actually, it's a place called Staines, and that's actually the best part of it because the area itself is just terrible. But anyway, we met up in a car park. It was sort of
no offense to anyone listening in Staines.
Yeah, every offense to anyone listening in Staines. Move now. No, it's not that bad, but it does sound awful. Hey, look, I live in a place near somewhere called Leatherhead and Effingham. And
what?
The
Effingham?
Effingham, yeah. And the place I live is actually Horsley. So we've got this strange name stuff going on. But anyway, back to Staines, beautiful sunny Staines. So I met Jawad in a car park. We started talking. We just started discussing and brainstorming and spitballing and everything else. And out of that, I'd always been quite passionate about what was to become the metaverse. I started a company called Digimask in 1999, and it was a personalization. It was intended for you to put yourself into video games. So it was a technology, a brand new technology then, which would allow you to take a photograph of your face and your profile, generate a 3D model of your head with muscles and everything else, so it could emote, it could smile, it could frown, then import that 3D model into the video game. So when you played something like Rainbow Six, which used it, then it would be you. And playing against your friends, and it went really, really well. So
nice.
But it was always, that was the sort of, for me, the first foray into what was to become the metaverse, because obviously avatar technology is going to be very, very important. And looking ahead, I believe that this was something that everyone would want. The problem was that this was 1999. It was way too early. This was the advent of digital cameras. We didn't even have phones on our cameras back then. Yeah. So it was really clunky, and it was all dial-up network on the internet and everything else. So we were talking about the infancy of this type of technology. But I was really, really proud of it. We ran the company for 12 years, and we were doing stuff with the British government that would change it would show, it was an anti-drugs campaign. And what the kids would do, they had a touring bus with the system inside the bus, and the kids would come onto the bus and have their photo taken, and within about 90 seconds, they could choose which drug. So whether it was crystal meth or cocaine or something like that, and they'd pick the drug, and they would show their face, how it would transform if they abuse that drug. So with something like crystal meth, they go very, very thin and get dark under their eyes, and their teeth would go all brown. It was disgusting. And of course, when you're a teenager, appearance is everything. And it was incredibly effective. It was really effective. And they loved it. And that campaign ran for about 5 years. Nice. It was called Ask Frank in the UK. So we were selling to the government. We were doing a lot with Disney, whereby you could create a digimask. That was the name of the company, the technology, digimask of your head, and you could import yourself into a movie clip. So we did Enchanted, we did Pirates of the Caribbean, we did quite a few, and then you were able to transform into the Hulk for the first Hulk movie, the very first one. So it was great, but it was too early. So that was my sort of first dabble with the metaverse. So I've always had this passion. Derailed a little bit, back on track. I always had this passion for metaverse. Jawad had a similar view on the future, but coming at it from a different angle. But essentially, we were both aligned. So we started talking about what could become. And I mean, I've never elaborated this much when talking about that first meeting, but that's how it sort of transitioned and evolved. By the time we'd finished the meeting, the whole publishing thing of the VR games was out the window. We were talking about creating the metaverse, or part of the metaverse. And for anyone who's interested in the whole sort of metaverse concept, I'd implore you to read a book called Snow Crash by the authors Neil Stephenson, which I read back in 1999. When I started Digimask, someone said, "Oh, you've got to read Snow Crash. It's just come out." It was way before Ready Player One, but creates some of those metaverse concepts. And I think, possibly, I may be wrong and someone will correct me, but I think that the phrase metaverse was actually...
I was going to say that as well. I think he might have coined the term.
That's right.
Yeah, that was where it all started. That's the origin. Of course, we were very much into blockchain at the time. I've got a good friend, Tony Pierce, who created Reality Clash, the NFT company, and he got me sort of interested in blockchain, etc. And we went down that path, and we started the whole thing with NFTs with the view to building the whole utility and metaverse behind it over the forthcoming years. The whole NFT play in the early days was a way for us to leverage the market as it was then and generate some revenues, because we've never had a proper fundraise. We've always been self-funded, and not many people know that. We've never had a huge investor come in and put in a bunch of money. We've been virtually self-funded. You know, this was part of the strategy because Jawad and I, and as we built up the team, the likes of Doug and Ash and Pierre, we're all quite experienced with business. So we were using traditional business practices and experiences and bringing those in for us to create and run a company as it should be, but taking in the brand new concepts of blockchain and tokens and everything else. So we had that combination of experience and freshness that I think gave us potentially a little bit of an edge over others.
Nice.
Long answer to short question.
So when you met, did the company already exist? So it was formed from that dirty car park and coffee shop.
No, we created Terra Virtua there and then. The first thing we did was actually try and assemble a management team.
Nice. Okay.
And bring in like-minded people who shared the vision. And so one of the early ones was a chap called Peter Bergstrom, who was very, very well known in the blockchain space. And Doug, I think, came next. Ash was very, very early on in the first. I think he was actually the first person to join us after Jawad and myself. And so it sort of grew from there. But, you know, again, from experience, we knew we had to have a good management team in order to keep that strong foundation and build and keep the vision. And we haven't really deviated from it over the past 5 years.
I was gonna ask, Gary, do you think where we are at right now, does this align to the vision you had in that car park when you were discussing for the first time?
In a very, very high level way, yes. I mean, you know, when you're dealing with new technologies, you can't really say which direction it's going to take. It will go all sorts of routes, and, you know, we'll do things and we'll implement certain things that don't work. We'll implement certain things that work better than we expect, and we listen to the community. This is one of the advantages of having worked in games. It's all about iteration. You don't release stuff until it's ready, until it's polished, until it's tested. It's important, and you take feedback from people. We're not arrogant enough to think that we will get it right first time every time. Sometimes we will, sometimes we won't, but our community is engaged and passionate enough to tell us when we're doing something wrong or doing something they don't like, and we're big enough to say, right, you're quite right, we will change it, thank you for the input. And we encourage that all the time.
Honesty and transparency. Do you sit back over the last 5 years? Is there something, or is a decision we've made as a business that you think has been pivotal in a good way or not so good way? Is there any decisions you think in hindsight we should have taken differently?
Yeah, I'll keep some of those to myself. I think
hard questions with Pierre.
Yeah, it is a tough question, and I'll
grill you, baby.
I mean, as I say, no one will get everything right first time. I think our timings, in some regards, were off. I always feel bad when it looks like we've let down our community, because, you know, we are trying our best all the time. And as I say, we're not going to get it right all the time. But I think where we're going to end up will be where we want to be. The route has taken us down some dead ends. The fundamental problem for anyone in this business is the unpredictability and volatility of blockchain. I mean, essentially, it all comes back to crypto, right? Which in itself comes back to Bitcoin. Okay, Bitcoin has such a massive effect on every single thing that happens in the blockchain space. And blockchain space includes crypto, it includes tokens, it includes NFTs, it now includes the metaverse and all the rest. And if Bitcoin goes up or down, that has a domino effect. And that's something we could not legislate for. And no one foresaw the big crash that came earlier this year or the big devaluation of Bitcoin and the trickle-down effect it had on every sector. Now, in some ways, because we've never generated, and I'll be honest about this, we've never generated massive revenues. We've done well, we've covered our nut, we've covered our overheads, but we've not made the tens of millions of dollars that many other companies have had. The problem with making, sounds like not much of a problem, but the problem with making large amounts of money is you scale up and gear up to meet those demands. Oh, we can have bigger overheads, we can have more development, we can do this, we can do that, because we're generating the revenues. If those revenues suddenly are taken away, all of a sudden you're left with a vacuum. You're left with a huge overhead, monthly overhead, and it's not being filled. I was reading an article, just see if I can find it, an article in, I think it was Forbes yesterday. NFT trading volumes collapsed 97% from January peak. That was in Bloomberg. I mean, that's enormous. Yeah. Now, if you're not generating that many revenues, you're not going to notice it that much. But if you're generating tens of millions, that's a huge hit to take on an ongoing basis. So, I mean, in some ways, we've dodged that bullet. But yeah, it would have been nice to have had those bigger revenues in the early place. But again, the reason I'd like to think we didn't generate those big revenues was because we weren't just throwing stuff out onto the market. Above all else, we've always had the belief that if we're going to charge anything from $20 to $20,000 for an NFT or for an item, it really needs to have quality. It needs to breathe life. It needs to be 3D, high fidelity, and everything else. Those don't happen quickly, right? You can't generate those quickly. So we spend time and effort crafting all of our NFTs, which means that our releases are relatively limited. And in turn, that means our revenues are going to be limited. So that's a thing we've always stood by, because at the end of the day, people say, why should I pay that amount of money for a virtual item? As far as we're concerned, utility is the key to that. And that's happening over the coming weeks now. We've been building the metaverse component to actually not just accommodate those NFTs you bought and might buy in the future, but also give them a purpose, give them some fun, give them some interaction. And that's slowly going to be deployed over the coming weeks. And I know we've got our land claim event tomorrow, or over the next couple of days, the Cardano land claim event, and stuff like that. And all of these are stepping stones towards that ultimate metaverse concept. It's not an overnight thing. It takes time, and we've got to do it step by step. We can't just spend, entrench ourselves for 12 months, build everything and release it, because what we've got to do is release things a component at a time, get the feedback, and make sure it's right, and make sure people enjoy it and like it. So it's an entirely iterative process. And that's always been our philosophy. Just release gradually, get the feedback. It's the same with video games. It's the same with mobile games. You release a version, particularly on mobile, on the free-to-play. You get the feedback, you get the analytics, you find out what's working, what isn't, you tweak it, you update it, and within 6 months, you've got something that people can really want to play. And that's how we view our virtual metaverse.
And look at what's behind you, right? I mean, that's a good reminder of the excitement we've got to come. Fantastic.
That's it.
Great answer.
That's it.
Great answer. Thank you.
You've been instrumental in getting us, IP such as Legendary, Dynamite. Is it harder or easier now in this market to get them? Are people more, like, when you started off, was it really hard to even convince people? What the hell is an NFT? What the hell is the metaverse? And now, is it harder, difficult, or is it still the same?
It's completely different. Back then, and I remember the first real licensing meeting we had was with Paramount. Paramount had no idea what an NFT was, but they knew us and we'd done well with video games. And so they took a leap of faith and said, okay, well, take these titles and see what you can do with them. And so we got Top Gun, we got Godfather, we got some big titles. They weren't a lot of money. They were very, very small amounts of money. But they wanted to dabble in it. And it, again, it reflects the old video games background whereby movie companies were licensing movies for games, not expecting to generate much money. But once the market really kicked in and took off, it became a major profit center for movies to license their IP for games, and still remains that way this day. So I think Paramount were very forward looking, as were Legendary and a couple of others. But it's all changed because, you know, then you had that glut of feast, if you like, of NFT sales, where you were reading about, you know, the likes of Top Shots generating tens of millions a week, a month, or whatever it was, and these big numbers. So all of a sudden, there were companies coming along waving massive checks for the licensed product. You know, and we're talking not 7 figures, we're talking about 8 figures, and in a couple of rare cases, 9-figure checks. Because I remember the Premiership was mooted, the English Premiership was mooted to be a 9-figure guarantee. Now, that's ridiculous, particularly in a nascent market that's just starting off. There is no way you can make money from that sort of deal because the market isn't there. We're still, I mean, it's been buoyant, and put aside the past 6 months where it's all gone nosedived, but even in its peak, there wasn't a massive user base. It was a churn of the same people, the whales and everyone else, people who'd made a lot of money on investment in Bitcoin and crypto generally, and they were reinvesting in NFTs and selling them to each other, and there was trading going on. But it was a churn, but it was a relatively small bubble compared to the mass market. So when you're paying $1 million, 10 million, 100 million for a license, there is no way on earth you can make that profitable with the size of the market as it is at the moment. Now we come forward, you know, the brand holders started to get these expectations and started reading about these massive numbers that were being given to music artists and to sports companies and everything else, and the expectation of what they could command for their IP went through the roof. And we stepped back because we just didn't have the financial resource to compete. The way I see it now, and obviously now that the market's generally, I won't say collapsed, but it's declined enormously, no one's stepping up with those big checks anymore. They just don't make sense. The way I see it going sensibly is that future license deals should be partnerships. They should be collaborations. And we say as Virtua, look, we are developing, we will develop your own island. Let's call it, well, for want of a better description, because we've worked with Legendary, let's say Legendary, okay? The people who did Pacific Rim, Godzilla v. Kong, all those. We say, we will create Legendary Island, okay? We'll build it, we'll populate it, we'll create the models, the NFTs, the structures, the buildings, the land, and everything else. We'll put a lot of money into development. You will sort of license that IP to us, but we go into this as a partnership. Our exposure is our development cost. We're not going to pay you a guarantee, but we've got serious skin in the game, and we'll do the best job as possible. We split everything down the middle, or whatever the negotiation becomes, and it becomes a genuine partnership. You come on board with us, we'll build your land, a Legendary themed land, and we will both do well out of it, as will the consumers. And because everyone has a really serious vested interest, then everyone will do what they can to make this thing work. Both partners will make it work. Whereas with a traditional licensing deal, it's been, here's a check, give us your license, thank you very much, we'll see you in 12 months when we renegotiate the new license. And that's it. And there's a few approvals along the way, but there's no creative input. What I believe is that the metaverse is going to become intrinsically crucial for the growth of any IP in the future. So when you are releasing a movie that has potential for merchandise, let's call it, they will think immediately, how do we fit this into the metaverse? It becomes part of the overall marketing plan, and they should look for a partner who can deliver that. Because like it used to be, you get the movie and then you start, the movie companies would start thinking about the video release and how they can capitalize on that, and the movie soundtrack and all of these components that actually make a lot of money for them, spun off from the central movie. Metaverse is going to be, I think it's going to be a key spin-off, as big, if not bigger, than the movie itself, particularly when you start introducing gamification elements. The landscape for licensing, the traditional licensing, is going to change a lot. It'll take time, but I think we're talking to one or two progressive companies who are starting to see the light in that regard and see the potential. It's a longer term investment for both parties.
True.
But whilst the market and the sector is relatively limited, no one's going to make any money. You've got to look at the long term and build up the whole plan. And I think that's, in my own opinion, it's my opinion, but I believe that is how it's how it should evolve. Whether it will, I don't know. But it's a sensible way to do business for everyone involved.
This is potentially an inflammatory question, but
good.
Like, in terms of brands, right? Do you think there's a sentiment in the market that if a big IP or a big brand comes along, it's a sellout, versus people are interested in homegrown, original Web 3.0 brands? What is your take on this?
Yeah. It's a great question. I think it's critical for companies like ourselves to build our own IP, because however close a partnership you have with the brand companies, it's not yours, and you don't have the freedom to do perhaps or experiment with it as you would if it's your own IP. So we've created VFlex. It's ours. We own it. We can do whatever we like with it, unrestricted. And it means we can experiment and we can try stuff which you may not have the freedom to do with normal licensors. There is that element. The sellout element, yes, I see that. And I saw it very much in video games when I was with a company called Ocean, which was very prominent in licensing movies, particularly for video games. And we produced some amazing, genuinely great games like RoboCop, Platoon, Untouchables, Addams Family. We produced Batman. Batman, the movie was incredible. But we produced some crap as well, right? Based on movies. And actually, they were often based on crap movies, but that wasn't intentional. So I think there is a lot of cynicism when people see a movie attached to a property, particularly a digital property like a video game or an NFT. But there are exceptions. And as long as we do have those exceptions, like the Spider-Man game for the PlayStation, which was wonderful, it was extraordinary, it was excellent, then I think people are smart enough to differentiate and say, okay, I love Spider-Man. That's a great game. I'm going to get that game. Yeah. But I love Spider-Man. The reviews for that game are rubbish. I'm not going to buy that game. They can figure it out. They're not going to buy it just because it says Spider-Man on the box. We used to call it the granny purchase. Granny will buy it when she's shopping for a Christmas present, and my daughter loves the PlayStation 5 and goes into the store and they don't recognize, Horizon Dawn or any of these, but they recognize Spider-Man, so they'll take that off the shelf. We used to call it the granny purchase. So you will always get an element of that, and then little Johnny opens it up at Christmas and is massively disappointed. So I think it's all about quality, and people have got a little wiser now. I mean, from Pierre's perspective, I know a high-profile license is a marketing dream, but you've got to have the quality of the product behind it. It's got to be a vertical. So it's not just a name or a brand. The product itself has to have value. It has to be useful. It has to be fun. It has to be experiential. It has to be interactive. It has to be all of these things. And then you will win the confidence of your market, and they will then look at a licensed product and say, these guys do a pretty good job generally. I like Pacific Rim, so I'm going to buy this virtual one because I know I'm going to have fun with it. And that's the reputation we want to carve out.
I think there's a lot in my experience, right, that I have found, as going back to games, there was very few games linked to a movie that were actually any good, in my opinion, right? Very few. And my rationale for that is because obviously they're working to a theatrical date that is dropping, and they've got to get that game out the door. And 90% of the time, they were just absolute trash. There are exceptions, and I think that's where it's going to slightly differ for us, because within our metaverse, it's going to be a living, breathing environment, ever evolving, and we work with the right IPs, and we can build those experiences over time. We're not trying to knock it out by a certain theatrical deadline. We're trying to build an experience that is going to last, I'll have longevity, right? And I think that's where I think games and metaverse, obviously they're linked, but when we're talking, say, a console game versus what we're developing, I think there's where there's some nuances there.
And that's why it was useful for us to get IPs like Top Gun and Godfather, because we weren't struggling against a deadline to try and meet the movie release, although there was an element of that with Top Gun because it was the sequel was supposed to be released the following year. Yeah. But basically, we had our time. We knew that there was a market. We knew there was brand recognition. We didn't have to speculate on whether the movie was going to be successful or not. It was there as a classic. So we could then build out stuff without those time constraints that you talk about. It's a really good point.
Yeah.
So Gary, do you have any fun stories from back in the day when you were traveling around the world to convince people of the metaverse, NFTs? You don't have to name clients, but was it?
Oh no, I've got.
Good. Go for it.
There's actually there's one recent one when Jawad and I were in Korea. I think you may have mentioned this once or twice, but I don't think it's widely known. We did this big presentation. In fact, it was probably the biggest presentation I'd ever made. I was on stage presenting to about 1,000, 1,500 people. And because it was Korea, they're all in suits and mostly investors, right? So very formal, very serious, and I love Korea. I love the Korean people. Fantastic. And so, finished the presentation, and this is when we had a VR offering. You could play Terra Virtua in VR, you see. And what I was doing, I was presenting the whole thing. Jawad was outside the conference room. We had a little booth with the VR setup. So the idea was I'd present it, tell people about it, and then say, outside, try it for yourselves. Go and have a look. So finished off, rapturous applause, as you can imagine. So went out, and Jawad's there with the rig, with the VR rig, and we're all suited and everything else. And there starts to be a very polite queue forming of these Korean businessmen. As I say, they're all suit and tie and everything else. So we're showing this, and they're really impressed. Then this guy comes along, lovely guy. Oh, I'd like to see it. Sure. So Jawad puts the rig on him, and he's going around. He's loving it. This is great. And he goes, okay, I've had enough now. So Jawad says, fine. He takes the controllers off him because, of course, can't see anything, grabs the headset and pulls it off his head. And as he pulls it off his head, the guy's wig came with it. He was wearing a toupee. So he pulls this headset off with this clump of hair at the top. I don't know whether the guy noticed. I couldn't hold it in. I had to walk away. So Jawad says he just remembers the back of my back with the shoulders shaking, walking away towards the door, and him being left to explain politely. So he sort of grabs the wig from the top and presents it to the guy.
Oh my God.
It was the funniest thing. So we did have some laughs. And the other thing, which was, it's a bit bad reflection on me, actually. This is way back in the day. Before E3, which is the video game show, the only exhibition that video games were shown in was CES, which is still going today. But you had CES twice a year. In January, it was in Las Vegas, as it is still. And then in the summer, in June, it was in Chicago. And there was this particular, and we're talking about mid to late 80s here. There was this big show, CES in Chicago. The two companies who had the biggest presence was Nintendo and Sega, right? They had a massive presence. They dominated the video games areas. It was in the day when obviously Super Mario was the biggest game on earth. And we were doing a lot of business with Nintendo, and I used to go there to Osaka and visit them. And I got fairly friendly with Miyamoto, the creator of Zelda and Super Mario. Genius guy, loveliest guy on earth. I mean, genuinely lovely and humble. One night there was this boat party in Chicago. I don't know who arranged it. And we get on this boat, and the boat sets sail around the lake and whatever, and having a few beers, and Miyamoto's there. So Shigeru Miyamoto. So I go up to him, had a little bit of drink, and I said, can I bum a cigarette, please? And yeah, there you go. So we're sitting on this boat, having a cigarette together and chatting. And I turned around and said, look, why are you wasting your time at Nintendo? Come and join us at Ocean. We'll pay you whatever you want. And he turned to me with all seriousness and he said, thank you very much, but I cannot possibly consider joining any other company. I am with Nintendo for life.
Wow.
Because they've just afforded me the biggest honor in the company that anyone has ever been granted. Jesus, what's this? What is it? He'd been, and this is without a word of a lie, he'd been given a company bicycle, right? The Super Mario 2 had done phenomenal, and they had presented him as a gesture of their gratitude, a company bicycle, which they'd never offered anyone before. Now, to him, this was worth more than money. It was a prestige. It was a token of their esteem and how highly they held him in regard, because no one ever got a company bicycle. And I'm sitting there with my cigarette and my beer thinking, we'll give you a Ferrari. But it didn't matter. It was what it represented. He wasn't materialistic. It was what it represented. It taught me a lesson actually back then. And he was fine about it. We were laughing about it and everything else. It sort of brought it home to me what's important to many people. Because I don't think he was, I don't know, he may have been on a fortune. I don't think he was on a massive salary, but it was all about job for life, about being held in regard by the company you work for. And this was the Japanese culture very much of the day. Because when you worked for a Japanese company back then, it was job for life. You went to a company and you were deemed to be there until you died, basically, or until you retired. So obviously to be afforded this sort of honor meant a huge amount to him. Yeah, it's an interesting story. Without a word of a lie or exaggeration, that happened. He never did take me up on my offer, but I understand why.
Could you have a word with Jawad? I think I could use a new bike.
Yeah, sure. You'll get.
I'll take the Ferrari, please. I'll have a Ferrari. You can take the bike. Go for it.
Yeah. Got it. That just shows you to be really shallow, Parves. And me,
I'm okay with that. Yeah, you come to me with a cigarette and a beer with the car offer, I'll say yes.
Yeah, okay. Maybe a model. It may only be that big, but yeah. We were at a conference, an expo in London it was, and there was myself, there was Ash, there were a couple of other guys. We had a little booth and we had a bowl of sweeties. And I don't know whether it was a show that was open to the public. And when you have a show that's open to the public, you always get these leeches, people who just come for the freebies, right? They have no interest in the product whatsoever, but they'll go around and take the T-shirts and the key rings and the carrier bags and whatever tat. And someone came along, this large lady came along, and we had a bowl of sweet candies. And she picked up the bowl, got out a carrier bag, and just emptied.
What? Oh, so it wasn't one sweet.
Bag. They were free. And not just one, just walked off with them. So I followed her and I shouted something. I'm not going to repeat what I shouted, but it wasn't very complimentary. And I was just cross. It'd been a long day, and you don't mind.
No. I
When people
agree,
take
yeah.
advantage, it was just
that's too much.
No, but Pierre, in Ash's story, did it feel like that the person took one sweet and Gary was a bit nutter to go behind this person?
I mean, if you went on Ash's story, she took about one sweet.
Yes.
Gary chased her down the
stabbed her in the back.
The event. He was like Daley Thompson from his Ocean game. Did a massive rugby tackle, then started headbutting.
No, he made you sound crazy.
Yeah.
So no, this story it makes sense now.
Yeah, no, I was really upset, and I just shouted something that was completely inappropriate. But I was cross.
What are your plans for the? I know you told me you're going on vacation soon, right? And you want to tan, so.
Yeah, I want to tan. Well, going to ever since so sometimes you'll see a movie and you go, that looks wonderful. I'd really like to go to that place. So I'm going to Madagascar.
Which movie was this?
Madagascar.
Oh, yeah,
So I'm looking forward to seeing all the animals talking. All the animals talk in Madagascar.
He's going to be lording it around the hotel like King Julian. You watch.
Yeah, I know all the animals by name. They all talk. I can't wait. It's going to be just like the film.
Perfect. How long are you there for?
Well, we've got a couple of weeks. We're going around that sort of area and doing Mauritius as well. So we're doing a bit of jungle trekking and whale watching. It's the whale season, so you can swim with whale sharks.
Oh, very nice, fun.
I love all that. Yeah, and humpback whales and all that. So that's my sort of passion is tracking jungles and wildlife and filming, videoing. Got the GoPro.
Oh, really? So you do that? Okay.
Yeah.
We asked Ash what was his pastime, his fun stuff that he does. I think he said, watch movies. Yes, that was number one. Number two was. So this is your thing.
I've got another. Oh, that reminds you. I've got another bad joke. No, I can't.
No, you should. Come on, Pierre. You don't have a joke for this week, right?
It's not appropriate, man.
I think in this podcast we've gone beyond that particular boundary.
All right, I've got to look it up again. Hold on. What Gary just said reminded me of it. Hang on. I'm not gonna repeat the one I told you before we started broadcasting or recording there.
No,
No, that
was a line.
Right, here we go. What does the sign say on an out of business brothel?
What?
Beat it. We're closed.
Hey, very nicely done. It's like you guys, you guys practiced this. You guys tied up together. Ash, masturbation, beat it.
I think
this is the podcast, guys. This is the podcast.
Thanks for explaining the joke, Bob.
I think we're going to give Bruno some work today in terms of editing.
Yeah. No. I think this should go as it is, Pierre. This should go as it is.
Yeah.
Everyone's seen Gary in all the AMAs and YouTube. He's so formal. We need this Gary, and we get him only on Virtual Vibes. This is a place where everyone comes to, let down, get loose.
This is the place everyone comes to end their careers.
Yeah.
Yes. It's a YouTube graveyard.
Yes. The alliteration show, your final appearance ever.
Yeah, look, our 20 viewers will beg to disagree. Right? So.
Yes. We know them all by name.
Oh, because they're all in the company.
They're all in the company. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And Parves 5 times, Pierre 11 times. Well, you know what, man? Nice chatting to you.
I'm hoping to come out and visit soon, Parves. So I'm gonna be in the booth with you.
When are you coming? Are you coming for Jitex? Maybe you can't say.
I want to come for Jitex. Yeah.
Okay. Very nice. Gary, when is your next visit here? When are you Are you planning one?
I haven't planned one. I'd love to come. I think after going away now, I'm actually wide open till the end of the year. So I think if there's a good reason to come over, it's long overdue. It's been, in fact, I don't think I've been over since before lockdown. Have I?
No, you came with Pierre.
No, we went in November. Remember we went in November last year, didn't we?
Yeah. You guys came in
yes,
my
you did.
second month or something like that. So I'm gonna be
right.
1 year soon. So yeah, both of you came down. Remember?
Okay. Yeah, it was November. I was just trying to forget it because it was
Because
so
of Pierre.
painful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had the ultimate travel buddy. I think that's the word you're looking for.
Yes. And we did the desert safari.
Yeah.
That was
yeah,
good
yeah.
with the camels.
Oh yeah, we did. That's right. Yeah, with the hawks and everything.
Yeah, it was
With
brilliant.
the what?
Brilliant.
With the Hawks.
Hawks.
Oh, okay.
Hawks.
I heard
Yeah,
something else.
yeah.
Falcons.
Yeah. Falcons, yes.
I'm not sure what you had. Yeah, falcons. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The Falcon Hawks.
the pigeons.
So good. Pierre, Jitex is in the next 2-3 weeks, I think.
Jitex it's the week of the 10th.
I'll see you soon then.
So we're just
I'll make some space for
just
you.
locking.
Shit, that means the
Yes.
studio's in mine alone now. I have to accommodate you as well. Because I'm ruling this now. You know, I'm being in the studio. No one.
I know you are, buddy. I know
No
you
one
are.
does except me.
And I'm sure there's a sleeping bag on the floor. You live there. It's your little crib.
Yeah. It's a fun place. You guys will like it if you come down. Okay,
Yeah, it looks so much fun. All black room and soundproof, and you can.
That's
you can,
the kind of
people
room
can't
that
hear you
Pierre
when you're
loves. But let's not get into that right now. Okay. Yeah.
I mean,
Your ultimate travel buddy. So
Right.
let's. I think this is a good place to end, guys. This is a good place to end. Pierre, do you have another joke for us? So, Gary, Pierre always ends the segment with a joke.
no, I've used up my bad jokes this week.
Maybe Gary, you seem to be the guy who might have a joke up his sleeve.
I got nothing clean enough to say.
Do you know, I'm not very good at remembering jokes, particularly if they're clean. There was one about, no, I can't. There's a very funny joke. Doesn't matter. I can't remember it. I remember the punchline, but I can't remember the build-up. But I will be prepared if I am ever invited back after this disaster.
Look,
I will be more
Yeah,
prepared.
Pierre, what do you think?
Chances are slim.
Yeah, no.
I feel like if
still
someone
alive.
actually does watch the show, they just cancel us. You know what I mean?
Well, yes. Well, I think there's a lot of cancel culture.
Yeah, we're just taking our chances, me and Pierre, right now.
Yeah, we'll just
Slippery
do what we
slope.
can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, very nice, guys. Very nice chatting with both of you. Gary, thank you for being our guest
Thanks,
today.
Gary. Yeah.
It was a very good session. And, you know, you gave us a
pleasure.
lot of stuff that we've never heard from you, I think.
Yeah.
But till next time, enjoy your vacation. I'll see you next time when you're more browner.
Thank you.
Browner.
Yeah, we will compare arms and everything else.
From Gary, you know,
Absolutely.
Gary Brown, maybe. Let's see if that happens.
Still be GB. Yeah, Gary D. Gary Brown. That'll work.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much, Parves.
All right. See you guys till
Thanks,
next
guys.
time. Everyone,
Cheers, yeah.
bye.
Bye.